Welcome to inDialog. I'm Vidhya. Today we meet Tabla virtuoso Zakir Hussain. His consistently brilliant and exciting performances have established him not only as a national treasure in India, but won him acclaim all over the world. The favorite accompanist for many great musicians and dancers from India, he has also worked with George Harrison, Mickey Hart, John McLaughlin, to name a few. He has many awards to his name, such as the Padma Shri, the Sangeet Natak Academy Award, and a Grammy for Best World Music Album for Planet Drum, which he worked on with Mickey Hart. He has co-composed the opening music for the Summer Olympics of 1996 in Atlanta. Welcome to inDialog, Zakir.
Thank you, Vidhya. Nice to see you.
It's great to see you too. How and when did your association with music begin?
As a child, born in a music family, my father being the tabla player, it never was decided exactly on a particular day that I would begin. It just, you just sort of slide right into it. As a child, you just watch everybody, you bang on the drums, you get told, okay, you do this or you do that, somebody tells you something. So you just carry on until you actually show some promise, and that's when the maestro or the guru pays a little more attention to you. So I sort of just began when I was 2 or 3 years old, just sort of, following the routine until I was about 7 about 7.5. And that's when my serious training actually took off.
Almost the day you were born, actually.
Pretty much. What they tell me is that when the child is brought home, the father usually has to recite prayers in the child's ear. Mm-hmm. So when I was put in my father's hand, when I was brought back from the hospital, must be 2 or 3 days old, he took me in his arm and instead of reciting prayers, started reciting rhythms. And so when they said, why are you doing that? And he said, well, the rhythms are my prayers, so that's what he should have. And so I guess the training began then. And he used to do that every day. He used to hold me and for an hour or so just sing rhythms in my ear. So I guess it began when I was 3 days old, but serious training, I think, when I was about 7.
Wonderful. You had a very unique relationship with your father in that he was your guru also.
Yes. I had many layered relationship with him. As a son, when I was born, I was more of a son. So he didn't really treat me as a student, and he just sort of was a father and son all the time, take me out for walks, get me sweets, the things, the usual stuff, until he saw that I was very serious about doing tabla. And so around 7, when I was 7, our relationship took on a different, level of communication when I became his student and he started teaching me on a regular basis. And so then I had to treat him differently. And at that time, he was much more stern. He was not just a doting father anymore. He was more of a serious guru. Mm-hmm. And he had to make sure that whatever it is that he was teaching me, that I was doing correctly. So the proper practice time, and no fooling around, going out and playing, whatever. So that seriousness came in, that focus, that discipline was brought in to my life, and that went on for a long time until I was ready to be an apprentice performer along with him. So then I would go on stage and sit behind him and play a little bit. when he looked at me, that kind of thing. And that developed until I established myself as a performer, and then we became colleagues. And then we were playing together and traveling together and sharing jokes together. So relationship goes from being just a son or a child son to a child student to a teenage student to a teenage co-performer to a colleague and somebody you would spend your time with, share jokes with, go have dinners with, and so on. So it was an interesting development in my relationship with my father and guru and friend and colleague.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Your father was a very conservative and traditional player himself, whereas you ventured out into new horizons. What was his initial reaction to this?
Well, my father, although a traditional musician, was exposed to the West in the early 60s when he was traveling, Ravi Shankar and him traveling all over the world. So he came in contact with a whole different philosophy in terms of music, where people were much more interested in finding out more about what music is where they are, what music is where everyone else lives, and they were a little bit more tolerant in the West to other ideas about music, other thoughts, other musical patterns, other traditions. And so that knowledge made him a little bit more lenient towards me being more adventurous in my studies of music. And he had already been exposed himself to jazz, to rock, to fusion, to whatever. So when I joined him in America and we were together, and I was being introduced to various musicians like John McLaughlin or Mickey Hart or people like that, and I started playing with them, he was not very, very stern. He was not worried himself that I was doing this, because he had already seen it happen in front of him, and his main comment to me was that as long as you maintain your roots, as long as you maintain connection to your tradition, and keep doing it regularly, it's fine, whatever else you do, because what's important is whatever you do, wherever you go, you should bring to the table, musical table, your own identity. Then people will accept you. If you try to be someone else, if you try to be them, it doesn't hold water as far as they are concerned. So bring to the table your own personality, your own identity, your own tradition, and see if you can inject that into whatever else you're doing with somebody else. So as long as you do that, it's fine. So he was much more liberal in terms of what I would do.
Wonderful. What were your reasons to deviate from the traditional, so to say, and work with jazz and other Western musicians?
I think it's a natural process. It's just that in India, in the early 30s or late 20s, people were still not traveling as much. And because of that, they had no influences upon them from various parts of India. I mean, if somebody lived in Delhi and played a particular type of music, he really had no idea what happens in West Bengal or what happens in Tamil Nadu. So therefore, the influences were limited, and so they were very strict traditionalist. Then came 50s and the 60s when people started traveling a lot. And so they started getting influence. A tabla player from Banaras would influence a tabla player in Pune or from Calcutta in Bombay. And they all started listening to each other, and therefore influences started creeping in, people started interacting a little more. And so it started changing. And for me, then the next step was that from India we moved outwards. We came to the West, we came to Europe, we came to America, we went everywhere else. And so it was natural that inspiration or influences would come from elsewhere, not just India. So it was a natural progression. So when I moved out, I had grown up listening to Indian film music, which was already a sort of a concoction of Western and Indian music. So when I arrived and I started getting involved with other musicians of various kind of cultures, it seemed very natural.
Did you ever feel at this time that classical music itself did not have sufficient ingredients to carry it forward to the mainstream audience?
I think I had a misconception for a while. As a young teenager, I felt I wanted to be a rock star.
Really?
I wanted to play with these famous musicians because playing Indian classical music is not going to get me anywhere. I'm sure I felt that way. But, there were a couple of comments made by some colleagues who I work with, people like George Harrison, John McLaughlin, these people, and Mickey, and they said that, Zakir, we love you, we enjoy your music, and we love to work with you because what you bring to us. It's exactly what my father had said, that, what you bring to the table, your uniqueness is what's going to make you acceptable to them. And I asked John McLaughlin that, look, you've studied Veena, so why don't you play Veena? He said, I will only do injustice to the music that I've studied on the Veena by playing it on Veena because I'm not very good with it. I can take that music and give it some respect and honor that it deserves by playing it on my instrument, which I'm very good at.
Right.
So I'm going to do that. It just dawned on me that I should do the same thing. I'm very good with tabla. I'm really good with it. I've studied it and I know it. I know the technique. I should take all this that is available to me and take it and transpose it onto my instrument, tabla, and make tabla a more complete instrument. Expand the repertoire of tabla by bringing in all these other elements into it. So that's what I did.
Great. We're all very happy you did so.
Oh, thank you very much.
Share some of your experiences while working with the Shakti group. Your rehearsals must have been charged with
electricity.
Electricity, right?
Real electricity. It's amazing, it's rare when 4 people come together and they have no preconceived idea as to what they're going to do. They have no music planned. They have no things written out on a piece of paper. This is what we're going to do. You just sit down and you open your instruments and somebody starts something and somebody joins in and somebody joins in. and it begins. And Shakti started like that. But more than that, whatever came onto the plate, it felt like that it was the correct ensemble. You know, it was like the best cuisine properly presented, you know, the first course, the second course, and the third course, all exactly the way it should be, the proper wines with it, and all, the whole routine. So it was exactly that. It was 4 people playing as one, 4 people thinking as one, 4 people just, you know, being on the same wavelength and having the same kind of energy, same kind of drive. It's Shakti was like that, and that's what was unique about it, and that's why people say that that music was you know, something like a milestone, because it sort of sparked an idea in people's mind all over the world, in musicians' mind all over the world, about interacting, about creating fusion, about creating something which is now known as world music, because when we started Shakti, there was no fusion. There was no world music, there was no new age, there was nothing.
Right.
And so, you know, it was one of those unusual combinations which appealed to music lovers all over the world. We played all the major jazz festivals, we played all major theaters. For 14 months we did not set foot at home. We were so busy, so much demand there for that music. And so I would say that it was one of the greatest experience of my life, most electrifying, and a great learning experience as well, because playing with Viku, the claypot player, was a revelation. To watch him play and to create those patterns was like a whole different world altogether. And Shankar, I don't know if anybody played violin like that. And John McLaughlin is just such a great maestro that he can fit into any kind of music he wants to play. And to us, it felt like John McLaughlin was more of an Indian musician than any one of us, because he was more concerned about, is this in the correct raga? Am I playing a wrong note? He was more worried about that than any one of us. Come on, John, just play, it's fine. And it was great. It's just, and the power of that music is such that we are still playing. We're still playing together.
Yeah, you came back together, right?
Yeah. And what is amazing is that we came back together. We thought we'd just do a few concerts and have fun. It's now 3 years.
Wow.
And 4 tours, and we are still going strong. We have another tour starting in end of June. And the demand just hasn't slowed. I mean, every time we go on tour, we're playing between 30 and 40 shows all over the world. It's just
that
amazing.
Must feel great.
It feels great that what we started then was something valid that is still there, and people still want it and still love it and still need it.
But Chaurasia has replaced Shankar in the...
Chaurasia ji replaced Shankar because Shankar was unavailable for a while, but then Chaurasia ji was also unavailable for a while, and we couldn't get Shankar, so we got Srinivas, the mandolin. And that combination of Srinivas, myself, and Viku, the claypot player, the one in the original Shakti, he, the Ghatam player, he said that he's getting too old. He's 66 odd years old, and he felt that the rigor was too much for him. So he said, would you take my son, Selva Ganesh? So we took his son. We wanted Viku badly, but so we took his son, and his son is the 4th member.
Shifting gears, how did you meet Tony?
How did I meet Tony? Tony is the world in many ways. I met Tony actually about a mile away from here. That way I played with John that way a mile away, and met Tony that way a mile away. Ali Akbar College used to be in Center of Town, and I was asked to be one of the teachers there by Ali Akbar Khan Sahab. So I was teaching tabla, and Tony drove in one day in an old Volvo to be a student there, to study dance, Kathak dance. She's a Kathak dancer. Yes. And so we met there in school. I met her, and then I kept trying to meet her for a long time. And then one day I said, let's go out. And she said, okay. And there began the relationship. That was about 29 years ago.
It's been a while.
And we've been married for 23 years.
You have 2 daughters.
We have 2 daughters. Tony still dances, does her performances and studies with Sitara Devi in India. And my 2 daughters are very busy, and they are also very creatively inclined. Anisa is the older one, Isabella is the younger one. Anisa is graduating from UCLA now. She is studying filmmaking.
Oh.
Although she has herself been a dancer and a piano player. My younger one, Isabella, is a very serious dancer. She's studying dance 3-4 hours a day regularly.
Kathak?
She studied a bit Kathak, but more ballet.
Okay.
And jazz, modern, that stuff. And she also works as an intern at the dance studio. So she's really seriously involved in that. And in fact, she's one of the principal dancers at the performance of the ballet company, and it's called Sobrilia at Marin Center, coming in June 1st and 2nd. And in fact, I'm playing